So we all know this is going to have to be a big-time retooling offseason for the Celtics. They're going to need to shed some salary. They're going to need to trade some guys. And yes, the obvious choice would be to trade Kristaps Porzingis and Jrue Holiday. They're both owed over $30 million next year. It's a good way to get rid of 60 off the books right away. Obviously, you'll need to get some players back to fill that up. But potentially, you're shedding $30 to $40 million right there. But the problem with those guys is they're old and or hurt, both of them. Porzingis gets hurt every year. He's got this weird mystery illness that made him an absolute traffic cone in the postseason. And Jrue Holiday, I still love. He battled some injuries this year at an age, whatever he is, 35, 36 now. And there's only a select amount of teams he can really bring value to. They need to be contending teams that the future Hall of Famer Jrue Holiday will be able to bring like real trade value to, or real value that you would trade for that team. So then that leaves Jaylen Brown. With Jason Tatum going down with the Achilles injury in Game 4 of the Knicks series, all of a sudden the rumor started to swirl that might be the last game that the Jays ever play together. Celtics are going into a bit of a tank mode next year. Even with Jaylen Brown as their number one guy, you take a top 5 NBA player just off their roster for an entire year. Like it's not going to be great. And you want to talk about shedding salary and getting real value in return. There is no one even close on your roster to the kind of value that Jaylen Brown brings. And as much as we talk about Porzingis and Holiday being the obvious deals, it's really Jaylen Brown and Derrick White that are going to bring you some returns here. And I don't love the idea of trading either of those guys, of course, because, Derrick White is one of the most underrated players in the league. Jaylen Brown is an all-NBA player. He's an NBA Finals MVP. Celtics fans don't necessarily want this, but where they're going, they can kind of restart pretty quickly if they get a good haul for Jaylen Brown. And so now the trade rumors abound. Okay, Bill Simmons had an interesting one on his show the other day. It was the Rockets putting out, or the Rockets having a trade rumor where they would said Fred VanVleet, Tari Eason, and the number 10 overall pick in 2025. And in return, they would get Jaylen Brown. Okay, the Celtics would get Fred VanVleet in the last year of his contract, $40 million. And the Rockets would eat some of that. It would be some cap relief for the Celtics. But you're not – what do you want with the 10th overall pick? Like, we all know the NBA draft at this point. Who are you getting at 10? Outside of Paul Pierce, who's a number 10 pick of all time that became anything? Really? So to me, that's just a no. At that point, if we're talking draft capital, I'm looking at like the number 1 pick in the draft. We're talking about an all-NBA guy here and an NBA Finals MVP. So the Rockets won, and there's been a couple different iterations of that. Not interested from a Celtics fan standpoint. There's a Spurs one that's pretty interesting, where the Celtics would receive this year's number 2 overall pick, which is going to be Ron Harper's other kid, Dylan Harper from Rutgers. The number 14 pick in this draft, Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, Jeremy Sohan, a couple of young, I emphasize really young players with some promise, and a 2030 first round pick, which would either be from San Antonio itself, Dallas, or Minnesota. San Antonio is going to be in on Giannis big time. They have been rumored to be in on a potential trade with Phoenix for Kevin Durant. So they might be looking at other options, but here you have a guy who is in his prime in Jaylen Brown, who has not had major injuries like Giannis and Kevin Durant have had. Now, at his best, Jaylen Brown is not the player that Giannis and Kevin Durant are, still probably, but he is an all-NBA guy who can give you a legitimate big 3 with De'Aaron Fox and Victor Wembanyama, and you're kind of trading some redundant pieces for it. And your picks aren't going to be that great in the coming years. So to me, I think that makes a ton of sense from the San Antonio side. You got to remember with Houston too, they will have some Phoenix draft picks over the next couple of years. If that gets thrown in the trade package, then we'll listen. But the thing with the Jaylen Brown trade is it's got to be one hell of a haul. Like, we're not talking about, oh, yeah, here's some decent young pieces, or, here's a barely lottery draft pick. Like, with all the trades we've seen in the last couple of years for guys of lesser value or equal value to Jaylen Brown, that game is over. We're not talking about a Kyrie trade here. After Rudy Gobert yields 4 first-round picks without making an all-NBA team, or when Mikal Bridges, who hasn't made so much as an all-star team in his career, gets 5 first-round picks in exchange in a trade, then that's more what we're looking at. We're not looking at a Tari Eason, Fred VanVleet 10th overall pick. No, we're more in the Mikal Bridges territory there, in the Rudy Gobert territory, the Karl Anthony Towns territory, than we are whatever that is that the Rockets are proposing, or that Bill Simmons is proposing that the Rockets are proposing. This is Jaylen Brown we're talking about here. Like, this is a legit piece that you add to a team that's ready to contend, like one of those 2 Texas teams, San Antonio or Houston. Look, it makes a ton of sense that he would, reunite with Ime Udoka in Houston. He can be exactly what the Spurs need. You have a good shot creator / distributor in De'Aaron Fox. You have a great transition guy and a good enough shooter when he's healthy in Jaylen Brown. And then you've got a unicorn in Victor Wembanyama. Like, that's a team with that big 3 that could be contending for a championship right there. And I think what's important about San Antonio is that I don't get the sense that Jaylen Brown really needs to be like the A1 alpha guy, like Kyrie needed to be when he was in Cleveland at the end there, and it looked like he was going to be traded. He would be that guy in Houston, and he would be playing for a former coach that got some pretty good basketball out of him. But I don't think he necessarily needs to be that. In terms of the trade value, yes, he needs to be that, right? Like, I'm sorry. After what we saw for a Mikal Bridges trade last year, there's just no way you're accepting anything more than multiple first-round picks. Good first-round picks for Jaylen Brown. Like, even with how quote-unquote desperate the Celtics look, because they're coming out here and saying they need to shed salary, but they're really not that desperate. They don't have to trade Jaylen Brown. It just has the most trade value right now. He's in his prime. He's 28, right? Like, that makes a ton of sense right now. But it's not necessarily a case where, oh my God, if they don't trade him, they're completely screwed. That's not really the case at all. So if you're not getting multiple premium first-round picks out of this, it's not worth it. Trade Porzingis, trade Jrue Holiday. You're a little bit more limited, but you're still shedding salary, which is ultimately what you want to do here. And the other interesting thing is Derrick White. Talk about an invaluable guy in Derrick White, man. There are going to be some suitors after him. Rumor now, Golden State Warriors. Makes a ton of sense. Derrick is still on a pretty friendly contract here with what, 2 years at least still left on it. He's got a good cap hit. The Warriors, they don't have much wiggle room. They don't have a lot of young guys or great young pieces. They feel like they can still get a run out of Steph Curry and Jimmy Butler. And what better guy to add around him than a terrific two-way guard like Derrick White? Guy's probably got more in the tank than Jimmy Butler has right now. That could yield some pretty good future capital from the Warriors, because while they don't have good picks right now, they will in the very near future. This is a 1 to 2 year thing for Golden State. After that, there are going to be some premium draft picks attached to them that the Celtics could hop onto. But they don't need to trade Jaylen Brown or Derrick White. They need to shed some salary, and they have other candidates to do that. But certainly those guys who are in their prime, and in the case of Jaylen Brown being an NBA Finals MVP, an All-NBA player with a max contract, we're not talking about just throwing some nice little pieces from Houston in a trade package with the 10th overall pick. That's not going to get it done. And if that is what gets it done, shame on the Celtics. shame on Brad Stevens, because we all think he's much better GM than that. If Mikal Bridges is getting what, five first-round picks, then why can't Jaylen Brown? He's a much better player than Mikal Bridges, and he's roughly the same age. So I'm not buying anything less than about 4 first-round picks at this point for Jaylen Brown, or a pretty damn good player along with a couple of premium first-round picks. Like, that's where the conversation's got to be at. Be very, very interesting to see how that plays out. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Do the Celtics even need to trade Jaylen Brown? And if they do, what do they need to be getting in return? Because all these mock trades I'm seeing are not good enough. From my vantage point, I'd rather just trade Porzingis and Holiday and see what you can get. But I think if you're going to retool this thing for a Jason Tatum quote-unquote rebuild when he comes back, and you want some pretty good running mates to go alongside and some good future draft capital, then yeah, Jaylen Brown trade is the way you need to go. So let me know in the comment section below. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. We come at you live on YouTube every weekday, high noon Eastern time, and then we're available wherever you get your podcasts as well. Check out the other videos on the YouTube channel, Talking the Celtics and Everything Boston Sports. I'm your host, Cam Stuart. Zach Burke keeps us on the air 5 days a week.